Good day, race fans, and welcome to the Intentional Wreck Podcast. Podcast made by race fans for race fans, from the casuals to the lifelong gearheads. My name is Jeff, and I'm here with my fellows Corey and Finn. And you can find us on Twitch at Intentional Wreck Pod. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify under the same name. You can also find us on the socials at IntWreckPod. That's at INTWRECKPOD. I don't even know why I include that so much in the intros anyway, because I don't think we've tweeted since like 2023. But regardless, we still
It's like Haley's
got to do
comment.
the plugs when we're
It's
gonna
still
do the
there.
plugs. So
That's right.
that's there. We are coming off a race in Kansas that was, by the standard of previous Kansas races, a little more the good stuff was more like in the middle
Hmm.
than it was in the past, where you saw a lot more battles in the front. It was a lot more of like that kind of like sweet delicious filling that was happening, as opposed to the entire piece in the exterior being what you're really like going for with that race. So we'll have plenty to talk about with the Kansas race. We'll have plenty of other to go over going into All-Star weekend. We will have our second power rankings pod coming up here within the next couple of weeks. For that's something for folks to look forward to. So yeah, the housekeeping is now out of the way. How you fellas doing?
I'm good.
I feel like crap. So if I sound a little nasally, my apologies. I'm in Florida and it's 85 degrees outside and I have a hoodie on.
There you
So
go.
here we
Yeah.
go.
He's struggling. I, on the other hand, have won 3 of my last 4 iRacing races. So I am at an all-time high, killing it. So,
We love that.
yeah, high
We
energy.
truly love that.
Won at Kentucky today. That felt good with the green walls and everything. It was sick.
Nice, dude.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't
like it.
raced in quite a while.
Got to
I'm due.
got to get on it. Got to get on it. Especially now they got
I get
the
back.
87 NASCAR that's running at Talladega, where they're going 217. You have to lift a Dega into the corners. It's crazy. But Jeff, I think somebody went P2,
That's right.
and I think you get 1 minute of uninterrupted gloating. Would that be the term? Our victory lane.
I'm never much of a gloater, but I will take my time.
Okay.
Yes, Seabell did take P2, much likely to the disappointment of Nick, who would have potentially been on this pod had Chase Elliott been there, because don't really have much of a choice once you get to victory lane. So I will take my minute and actually gripe a little bit and talk about how much I can't stand blackout restrictions. This is something that has annoyed me for a very long time. I am a pretty avid baseball fan and watch on a very regular basis. And baseball, I think, more than a lot of other sports, is plagued by blackout restrictions almost more than most of the major pro sports out there. And it drives me crazy. Uh, you're talking about a game that at one time was one of the most popular sports in the country, dipped, had different aspects of popularity, right now has seen a talent boom and a personality boom like we haven't seen in many years, with so many great players that are happening and so many things that are good for the league as far as just being an entertaining product. And you still have these archaic blackout restrictions that keep
Mhm.
people from watching your game. You've done a little bit better about the fact that you get the free game of the day with MLB TV that I don't think you advertise nearly enough. You have a product that's like MLB TV that I would argue is one of the best league streaming platforms that you can get, yet it's still pretty pricey. And you still have people throughout this country that live in areas that, because of that location, are restricted from watching any team within 100 plus miles of their general area, sometimes multiple teams in certain states. I'm in one in Northern Virginia in which my Nationals and the Orioles are both blacked out here. So when I sit down to watch ball, one of the issues that I run into is I have to make sure that I have my cable subscription ready to watch on their specific thing. But then if I want to keep up with the rest of the games and I want to stream that, I have to have a laptop handy to do that. And I can't flip through certain channels and like watch Big Inning or watch all the other games that I'm trying to watch around the league or flip to some other platform that I have set app on, it can be a pain in the ass. But the biggest scourge and the biggest frustration point for me in general is the fact that you have people all over this country that are basically blackballed from watching teams and watching who they want to see, regardless if they pay almost $200 for your streaming platform. Fix that shit now. We're done.
All right, if he wins if he wins next week, then
Bro. No, I'm with you. I'm 100% with you on this one, Jeff. I don't understand it. I never have, and I never will. It makes no sense, dude.
Well,
Like, it makes no sense.
We are.
It's irritating.
You feel like as we've moved further and further into the technology era of the world, in the digital era, that these we would have more access, right? And
Right.
I called out Max the other week for not having the NASCAR in-car audios. Well, those were back this week, so I don't know if it was a matter of
Because I have a tech problem.
could have been tech issue, it could have been other things. And you guys work AV, I work IT, I get it. And if that's all it was, I can live with that. It was back, and it was glorious. If you do nothing this week but go back and just watch the 48 and that camera or that in-car and just listen to Alex Bowman curse like a Call of Duty lobby kid for 2.5 hours, it was incredible. So, but yeah, back to you guys' thing about that. It sucks that sports are losing popularity. The NBA is at an all-time low in terms of its popularity right now. You talk about baseball, which was, we're at a time where we're watching, 3, 4, maybe the greatest baseball players ever, right? Aaron Judge is going absurd right now.
Shohei Ohtani, 420 or something.
Trout's still in the league. Shohei's still in the league.
Shohei, right? We just came off a 50-50 season after a 40-70 season. Yeah. And I think I could walk down the street and go maybe half the block before somebody even knows who Ronald Acuna is, right? So we're in a scenario where sports has got to do something. Eventually, they're going to start losing money, right? But I don't know what's going on.
I will contend with you on sports. Got to figure it out. The NFL and motorsports as a whole are on the come up.
Yeah.
So
always.
I'm with you on that one to an extent, but also one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about blackouts as part of my victory lane. I figured it would be a nice lead in because we're getting to in the season. After the All-Star race coming up next week, we are about to see NASCAR do something that they haven't done before, at least to this degree. And now we are about to go to our second broadcast partner, and then we will have a third towards the end of the year. And we're seeing all of this change. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring that up, because I'm curious to see how it goes. They've announced the crews. I'm cool with that. I think some of that's going to be good. One of the things that I thought was interesting is the Coke 600 is supposed to be broadcast exclusively on Prime.
Yes.
NASCAR decided, NASCAR and, Jeff Bezos' money decided that one of the biggest races of the year, the Coke 600, is going to be on a streaming-only platform. I find that interesting.
It's also going to have Dale Jr.
Right. There are aspects of this that are good,
but do you think
there's other things about it that I'm like, okay, let's see how this rolls.
Do you think they'll go live on Twitch? Because remember, there's the Amazon Twitch, just like how for example, all of the Thursday night football games are broadcasted by Prime. And not only do you get the main Twitch, but you get the next gen Twitch with the cool stats overlays, right? So
I'm a give me more, not less. The more parties, the more organizations stepping up to the plate to compete for one product only helps the product. They're competing with each other. You're adding to the competition. NBC and Fox don't really care to compete with each other. And frankly, it wasn't even really a competition ever anyway, because Fox is pretty terrible. We've all said that from the jump. This race this past weekend, the first 2/3 of it was just a one long commercial, basically, on the TV broadcast. Me and Jeff were texting back and forth like, what in the hell is going on with these commercials? But I think that Amazon having already dipped their toe in the NFL is a good thing for this. Sports broadcast, they're not new to it. They're new to this product, but not to sports broadcasting as a whole. And I will say that if you're going to go to stream, I'm glad it's like Amazon Prime, which frankly most people have. Right. Most people I feel like have a Prime membership or have access to one or whatever, but not some random one like fucking Tubi
Or
or
Peacock.
like Peacock or something like that. Like I'm glad
Right.
it's Amazon. I really am. Like
Right.
even and Netflix had the Netflix has done boxing in the past. Netflix had the last, I think it was Jake Paul that fought Tyson.
Yeah, that was
And that was kind of a disaster, honestly. Their freaking servers melted down in the middle of that fight.
yeah. They're getting
Um,
better now because once they got WWE, they have a
right.
consistent live product to broadcast now. So that is
So
something that has changed with that since they've started doing Raw, and it's not bad. They've
yeah,
done a decent job.
and Amazon Prime, much like iRacing said, we're stepping into the NASCAR arena. We need Dale Earnhardt Jr. And they went and spent the
Mhm.
money and got Dale Earnhardt Jr. So
Yeah.
okay, like they're taking it seriously at the very least.
And they
Right.
got a hell of a
I'm
race.
here for it.
They've got a hell of a
Yeah.
race to kick it off. Like if they're doing something that's gonna make them propel them up, it's one of the biggest crown jewel races, the longest crown jewel race, and hopefully that means if it rains, they're willing to keep the crew there because conspiracy said that was the reason why we didn't go green last year was because Fox was like, all right, we're done, send the crews home. So, but Jeff Bezos don't care. He's all about money. So hopefully, so
Fox is all about money too.
yeah.
They're all about money.
Well, they didn't want to keep those guys there. But so Kansas occurred. Me and Corey initially had, I wouldn't call it a heated discussion, a slight disagreement on the status of that race. What were your guys'
Jeff Gluck, the Jeff Gluck poll bared me out, by the way.
Oh yeah, 58%. I had a lot of
58.
arguing, and I've said this before. One of the things that frustrates me with races is if there's just passing in dirty air, and then you can't pass the leader. And I look like a hypocrite to then say this Kansas race is different. But here's why I say it's different. To catch and pass the leader, you must be faster than the leader. To catch the leader, you must be faster than the leader. Nobody was faster than the 5 at any point in the first 30 laps of a run.
So
that's
true.
There's not a single
except
car.
when you except on pit road.
No, I'm talking
Pit road being the X factor.
Right, but
which happened.
The scenario was Kyle Larson had a short run car and had would wear down the right rear, and that was allowing Chase Elliott to catch them. Okay, I think there were 5 cars that had race winning speed that were in the same tier of speed throughout the day. The 5, obviously, the 9, obviously, the 11, who I think was the true fastest car of the day, the 21, and the 48. Those cars, I think, rolling into that race and out of the first blitz of
the 21 or the 20?
21.
Okay.
I do not think the 20 had race winning pace. He qualified well. He was up there. I don't think he had enough speed. He did not have the speed to run down, and he had a short run car too. Like the 20 was fading on long runs, not as much as the 5. But the 9 was extremely fast on the long runs. The 11 was a jet, genuinely a jet. If his clutch didn't go down, he was crazy. I'm going to get into my weekly Bowman rant here in a little bit, but up until he got put in the wall, the 48 was bad fast. And then the 21, another guy just absolutely flying up through the field a lot. But none of those guys, sans Elliott, ever got to like second and an opportunity to go. No stage break. The 9 is absolutely passing the 5 with no push. Like I don't see a scenario where the 9 catches the 5 like he did and then gets arrow blocked and can't pass. He was 100% faster. You could absolutely catch and pass in these cars. Saw it all over the place. That's why I'm like, okay, well, the scenario is all those guys did shitty things and ruined their day. The 9 had a slow pit stop. Not his fault, but it is what it is. The 11 had the transmission issues and a bad pit stop with the right front. 48 got put in the wall. 21 speeding penalty. It sucks that none of those guys ever made it back to fight the 5, but the 5 had a perfect day across the board, and everybody else made mistakes. And that happens. And then he went and dominated because nobody that had a good enough long run speed was in a position to make that run. So that is why I'm willing to see this race a little differently than I would like a Phoenix, where you genuinely can't catch and pass the leader. They're gone.
So one thing I did want to bring up on that touches on some of the overall themes too. Finn, usually when you're watching the race, you have the in-cars up while you're watching the regular broadcast, correct?
Right. I have like 7.
So
I have like 7 in cars up.
I have a feeling that some of that plays some of a role in why your perspective on what the race looks like may be a little bit different than others, because I don't know if that's the overall experience. And here's why. At first, like, for full disclosure, when we were in our group chat and we were talking about the race while we were watching, on the day, like, the disagreement that they're talking about was Corey thought it was a boring race and putting it that way, and then Finn was like, well, no, all of this is happening and that's happening. And one of the things I was thinking about while they were going back and forth, as often you all see this, a lot of times those two will go back and forth, and I'll kind of sit here like this, and I'll just kind of let them go and do their thing, and eventually I'll say a thing after a while when they go too long. But what I was thinking during that process was, I feel like one of the things that I kept noticing during that race, and this has been a common thing during a lot of Fox broadcasts, how many times in between those long commercial breaks was the airtime taken up by just watching the 5 by himself, cruising around the track, just, in there, and just, look at Kyle Larson, look at him go, look at him do that.
The other piece of that too is there was only, I think, 2 runs where he actually caught lap traffic, right?
Yeah.
The run length would get him right to the back of lap traffic. I think on like the first run or something, when he was just absolutely smoking the field, no one was close to him early in the day, right? He qualified first. No one was close to him early, and he lapped up to like the 20th place
14
car.
or 15 cars, something
Right.
like that.
So like those guys eventually take the wave around, whatever. But even in that scenario, he's in lap traffic and no one can catch him. And later on in the race, as the other cars started to improve, the runs were not long enough for him to catch lap traffic and have them impact the race. So a lot of what you see on the shorter tracks is the leader can get caught because of lap traffic. I agree with you, Finn, that maybe it was a matter of circumstance, right? That all those cars that were fast enough did dumb things and took themselves out. That's a fair point. I still found it to be boring, right? It's just like, and it's not, you guys know, me and Kyle buried the hatchet. Me and Kyle buried the hatchet long ago. This is not a Kyle Larson problem. I'd have felt the same way if Chris Bell won the race that way. And I just don't, I'm not, those types of races don't appeal to me. I want competition for the lead that doesn't happen in the pit road, right?
So,
That's just
it
what gets it for me.
Well, and it can't be a Kyle Larson thing. Like, we're at a point where we are witnessing some special stuff from him, and have been for a while.
Sure.
That's undeniable, and at some point you kind of just have to sit back and watch the magic.
I agree. But then I realized that all the complaints I had about Kyle Larson were actually Chase Elliott. But here's the last thing I'll say to this. 19 races at Kansas have been ranked on the Jeff Gluck poll. This was 15th out of 19. So I'm not the only one that felt this way.
Sure.
It is my point. Now, there's an argument to be made that it could go either way, and that's what the poll bared out. It was 58. Roughly half the people thought it was good. Roughly half the people thought it wasn't.
That's why
that to me makes perfect sense. It wasn't an 85 or 90 like it was at Kansas last year when we were under the lights and we had the closest finish in the history of NASCAR. That was a great race. That, by the way, Kyle Larson won. So,
right.
Yeah. That's why I brought up the broadcast, was because I felt like a lot of like the perspective of what you watched and how you were looking at it was going to play a role. Because even if you weren't doing, like, Finn, you were watching in cars, right? Like, even if you're not watching that, if you're doing like what I would do, what NBC used to have on some of their streams, they'd have the battle cam, right? Or they'd have some other perspectives. Even if you had that other second screen, that would allow you to see where a lot of that excitement, and there was a lot of 3 and 4 wide in the middle of the pack. There were a lot of movers that were happening there, and you'd hear about it. I'm not going to discredit, Mike Joy and the rest of the crew that were trying to make notice of a lot of it. But at the same time, like, you didn't quite see some of that because I think they're also fighting some of the criticisms they've had about the fact that they don't show the front of the pack sometimes when they're trying to show their other stories, and it feels like they can't quite get it right.
Rich Petty said that.
Yeah,
Right.
well, he did, because we've seen multiple times now on Fox broadcasts where for some reason they'll have 2, 3, 4 guys that are battling it out in the front. And then they're like either a commercial break or they're like, and now let's cut over here while there's a battle for the lead. So that's one side of the coin. And then they have another side of the coin where somebody is literally 2 turns ahead of the entire field. Meanwhile, you have guys 3, 4, 5 wide behind them, battling it out. People are passing 10, 15 spots, making moves, all kinds of cool shit going on in the background. And we're just watching Kyle Larson just by himself,
Right.
just cruising around, driving to Topeka, like it's like, dude,
Yeah.
find the middle ground.
And to, to just dump again on the Fox broadcast, it is tough. It is a tough job, but they have got to tell the story of the weekend so much better. That is the problem, right? How many times this year have they gone to the cutaway car, which is that graphic where they kind of break down into the car and you can see specs, and it's just like, oh, look, the nut. This is the when you tighten the.
It is the same
nut.
one.
It is the same one
every time. Dude.
Every time. Can we all right? How about this? I don't know if you guys caught, but I was watching practice because practice and qualifying happened at the same time as the Indy race, and if you watch IndyCar, it's the Alex Palou show. So yeah, once it kind of locked in that he was going to win that one, time to go to qualifying. First session of qualifying, these guys didn't get a whole lot of time because I think like 4 to 5 guys had left rear tires go flat. Like, what is happening? Like, that's literally what was going on, is like, what is happening? And they did bring a new left side tire to the track this year, but like, first it was Shane Van Gisbergen, and it was like, everybody was like, oh, Shane sucks at oval, shitty track house driver, da. And then all of a sudden it was Brad Keselowski, and all of a sudden it was Ty Gibbs, and then there was another one. It was like, oh, Briscoe had one. It was like, oh shit, people's left side tires are going down. What's going on? Well, explain that, Kevin, because Clint can't. His head is just hot air. Tell him about the hot air that goes into the tire, and that these guys are running them low, and then that's, show a graphic of them coming on new tires and how like literally flat they look, and the advantage that tire pressures provide. Tell that story, and then that probably explains why that first stint went the way it did, because everybody was like, yo, if we drive too hard, are we going to kill the left rear tire and go flat? Like, what's going to happen when this race starts? And of course, we know one guy, Kyle Larson, who just doesn't give a shit. He catches on. Just think back to the Bristol race when everybody was going slow and steady at the start of the Bristol race, and then Kyle was like, yeah, the tire's not wearing. And then he just went outside past 4 cars, took the lead, never gave it back. It literally was like the same scenario. Kyle realized, oh yeah, no, we're good. And then he took off, right? It's just one of those things, like, they could do so much better at telling the story of the race. But another thing, and I'll put a criticism towards your point about the race, and NASCAR is all the teams competing at one time, but only one driver can win. I've kind of quit looking at just the winner. The winner of the race is a big part of it, yes. But there are a lot of storylines that are happening in our season. I posted this in the chat. Fun fact, every time a Hendrick driver has won a race this year, Chase Briscoe has finished 4th. Chase Briscoe.
That is it's such a weird stat.
Right. Finished 4th this weekend. He's got 4 top 5s. All of them were in Hendrick car wins. 5 top 10s to 12 races. Starting to get that speed back. That's a storyline I like to watch. Bubba is an interesting storyline because he was, after we did our power rankings, it was like a couple 3rd place finishes, maybe even a 2nd place finish. And now he's back-to-back weeks of kind of slumping a little bit, Like, there's a lot of, we still have the Bell, and Byron's kind of slumping a little bit. There's so many interesting stories as we're watching. And then, it's only going to get better as we get to the road courses. And then we're going to go back to like, all right, well, can SVG compete? And then we're going to go to all these things as we get more and more winners on the season. It's those things have to be accounted for when we say, was it a good race? I feel like those polls and Reddit and all these guys, they're just like, did my driver win? That is a first factor of yes or no. And second, was it a cool finish? You can't have the elite moments without, damn, he dominated and that was it, right? Martin Truex Jr. leading 588 of 600 miles in the Coca-Cola 600. There was nothing wrong with that era of car. Sometimes these races are just, and you know what? I think it's more of a gray area. It doesn't have to be, it was the greatest finish of all time. That race was fucking awful. It's like, okay, it wasn't a banger Kansas race, but that race had plenty to watch and plenty
But that
interesting
that
happened.
was my point, though, is that it's not that it was the worst race I've ever seen. That's not what I'm saying.
Your phrasing was Phoenix-esque.
It was Phoenix-esque.
Not at all.
Dude,
Phoenix is genuinely one of the most boring tracks on this schedule.
The only comes back to what Jeff said. When you're watching the broadcast, the only exciting part of this race was the restarts. That's it.
Again,
I'm telling you.
That is okay. If you're gonna say the broadcast sucked, with you.
I hadn't considered that until Jeff said that.
Then we're good.
You're right.
We're good.
The watching of the different things definitely colored my perspective differently than yours would have been. I didn't have 8 screens showing every single thing going on. I was only watching the Fox broadcast.
True.
And the only redeeming quality of watching that race purely on Fox without any other stimuli was the restarts. That's it. Everything else was just them tracking Kyle Larson around, or occasionally that one section of the middle of the race where there was like 4 cautions back to back to back to back, which, by the way, all started because of restarts.
Right.
So like, that was my Phoenix-esque point, right? Phoenix is the only exciting thing is the restarts. Yeah. And that was what you got from Fox on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's more indicative of just a shitty, and then we're back to it, right? Shitty broadcast. And since we're doing things that are repetitive, can I do my 48 rant?
Sure, bud.
Yeah. All right. First of all, fucker starts 21st. He gets to 9th in 6 laps. I could not believe my eyes, fellas. I put it on. I was like, this is going to be sick. Sit down, watch the race. And I'm seeing the 48 ride the top like prime Larson. Okay? I think Ghost of Jimmy took over this car for a little bit. He's up to 9th. And we get the initial caution that occurred. I can't remember if there was a single car spin out or what ended up happening, right? But we get that quick caution 7 laps in. I'm thinking, man, dude, he's flying. And they fucking pit. And end up at 22nd. And I cannot for the life of me think, what are we doing? And you would go, well, he's going to have better tires. Maybe they're trying to learn. You did the hard part, Blake. Your driver got from 21st to 9th. How many times have you wrecked because you were in the back of the field dealing with some bullshit on a restart? Somebody gets tapped, squeezed, hit, wall, dead, right? You got to 9th. And then they restarted. And guess what? Fastest car on the track again. But it took him like 30 laps and he got up to 6. And you're like, look at that. We were a net of 3 spots. Motherfucker, if you would have stayed out, you might be first. It was a super long run.
Is it possible that he had, at that first caution, the worst tires on the track?
No, I mean,
just going so hard.
No, it stayed up 6 laps, dude. It was 6 laps. It was nothing. Like, that's you don't have enough time to learn. And I think what he was thinking was like, hey, we save a set of scuffs. We remember the left side stuff we were talking about. Like maybe they learned like, were we pushing a little too hard? What does that look like? Is there a reason to learn information? Yes, but stop making gambling decisions when your driver has done the hard part. Like earlier in the year when he was 3rd, the first 2 guys pit and they stayed out. You don't need to make a track position call when you have track position. So he
driver drive.
He drives all the way up to 6th place and he's 10 seconds behind the leader. And I gotta think that if he's got that kind of pace and he would have started that restart 9th, he might be 2nd or leading going into the stage break. And now it's a completely different scenario. Instead, he goes in 6th. They come out of the stage, and of course, they lost spots on pit road. So now they're like 10th, and that was a scenario where Denny got tight on a turn, squeezed the 38 up into the wall because we're battling in the middle of the pack now instead of being closer towards the front. And then the 48 lost a lot of its short run speed, and the car wasn't turning. He had a little bit of a vibration in the front right. And that's when I go back to, like, Alex was pissed. Alex was pissed. He was, and even Zane Smith had the fun. He's the 38, had the funniest thing because Alex was flipping him off after he passed him. And Zane was like, you need to tell you tell him he needs to keep his hands inside of his car, whatever. And his spotter told him, he was like, he's mad at the 11. And he goes, well, this one says 38, not 11, right? And Denny passed Alex and flicked Alex off. And then Alex said something along the lines of, he better put his hands back in the car. I'm going to dump him. Then he said, hey, go find I can't remember if he said the 38 or the 10 spotter. He told his spotter, he said, hey, go find it was Riley Herbst. He said, go find the 35 spotter and punch him in the teeth. Like, when I tell you he was pissed, and then Alex is like fired up, and they're on a caution. Blake's trying to get information, and Alex is just fucking livid. He's livid at Ty Dillon for blocking high and running the high lane for like multiple laps, and then the 35 for doing the same thing, even though they're multiple laps down. And so he's screaming about the 10, he's screaming about the 35, he's all pissed off. And then his spotter, Kevin Hamlin, is like, all right, dude, listen, man. He's like, they're trying to like rah, reset him. And he's like, listen, we're still going to go hang out later. We're still going to go get some brews at the house,
I heard
man.
that. They had that on the broadcast.
Right.
Yeah.
But then he just started, he just jammed the signal where it was just gargly. And Alex was so pissed that he was just like, fuck you. And he just hits the thing. So all it is just jamming, radio jam noise. And then Kevin and Blake, the crew chief and spotter, hopped to a second channel. And he was like, that's Alex's way of telling me to shut the fuck up. So he can do whatever he wants to do. But yeah, I'm just going to go now. Like, just do my job now. Like, it was, and I was in Discord with Josh and Amber during the time, and I forgot about it and I was rambling. But like, I think we're this close to seeing what I wanted from Alex Bowman, which is don't lift on restarts. Stop giving these motherfuckers space. I'm not necessarily mad at Denny. He got tight. They're all racing for position. He's a fast car. I get it. The reason why you got squeezed is because Denny's like, I'm not going to lift. I got the fastest car on the track, and you gave me a lane to the 38, not the 48. I don't think he intentionally did anything to the 48. And that's why Denny Hamlin wins races, is because Denny Hamlin's like, you're going to give me that lane? I'm going to take it. Alex lifts, and that's why he rides around in 8th with a scuffed-up car. So the moment I see somebody spin off the nose of the 48 because he decided not to lift will be the day that
We'll be clapping.
He's arrived.
Just
yeah.
When was the last time you see the 48 aggressively? I mean, I said this last week, so I'm not gonna do it again. But the last time it happened, he won a race. So we're so close. Right. But that was great. Any other thoughts? Reddick was uncharacteristically not available.
Something off with both of those 23XI cars.
Yeah, I think they need a road course race to.
Speaking of 23XI cars, though, time. My goodness, what a debut in a cup car.
Yeah.
Or maybe was it a debut, or was that
I think it was his second.
It was his season debut in the cup car.
Right. What a run, all things considered, especially with the way the rest of the day went for the rest of the 2311 cars. Yeah. There was a great meme that was going around the day after, and it was this glaring face of it was the rest of 2311 glaring at Riley Herbst while Corey Haim finishes where he does. I don't know. There was just a lot of that going on because it's like the dude's real, man. The way that he's running in truck, the fact that he's had as many car issues as he's had in those truck races has just kind of sucked, because if it hasn't been for that or some, unlucky situations on pit stops, I mean, we'd be looking at just an insane run of wins in the truck series for Corey Haim at this point. I mean, he's faster than everybody in the field by so much.
Right.
Throughout 90% of just about every race he's in right now. Can't wait to see him move his way through the ranks for Toyota. I mean,
I'd say he has the better truck, the best truck in the field, but he's fighting cup regulars every week. Mm-hmm. That, it's Haim, Briggs, or whatever cup regular. And Riggs hasn't, I think, put in a good enough race together to win it. But Lane Riggs has had some really, really solid runs and some solid speed in that 34 truck. But yeah, Heim
Truck
is a
race was awesome,
yep.
by the way.
Yep.
Yeah, the end of
Truck-
that when
truck race was
Riggs trying to
awesome.
run down Husavar at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic.
Get into the wall and they
Yeah.
both keep going. At see, like,
Right.
give me that, man. Give me that.
Right.
Give me guys putting each other in the wall
So-
on the last lap and still somehow both finishing the race. Give me that shit.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
So I have a yeah, no, sorry, Finn.
No, we're good. I didn't have anything to add really.
Oh, I was transitioning. One of the things I was going to bring up is because I think this is interesting. We've talked about NASCAR practice and stuff in the past, and we've talked about amount of time on track, and we've talked about things like that. And we're at a time of year that always makes me think about that since we're getting close to the Indy 500. And here we are, like as normal, we are 2 weeks away from the Indy 500. Practice has begun.
Mhm.
And when I say that, if you're not familiar, what I'm saying is for now, multiple times this week and next week, leading in to the 500, there will be 2 hour practice sessions for the Indy cars on the same track to get those cars dialed up and ready to go before this race that is over 2 weeks away. Now, I'm not saying NASCAR needs that, but at the same time, we have had this discussion before where practice and the development of the storylines and the lead up to qualifying and some of the other factors that can build the weekend, we don't get that so much. I find it interesting because I think this is something that does build into the meat of what makes the Indy 500 what it is how much prep and how much practice, how much truly goes in to that race. And the other thing to keep in mind with that too is Kyle Larson's going to be trying the double this year, which means Kyle Larson is going to need to be in Indianapolis and in these practice sessions, which means at least twice a week he's going to have to be in Indiana and then make his way over for the All-Star race and then go back to Indiana. And that, so it's some other factors to talk about there. But,
it also means it's going to rain.
Yeah, let's hope not. But those are just some other, a factor to keep in mind and something that we have talked about in the past regarding, what builds a NASCAR weekend and how we don't quite get that same feel with practice. And we look at the greatest race in America and watch it, the build up and the lead up to it and how much goes into it. And I don't know. I think it's interesting because we're leading into the All-Star race for NASCAR, so we're kind of moving into a little bit of a lull because we don't have a points race. While Indy is about to reach its absolute peak of the season, arguably more than the championship, more than St. Pete, more than just about any other aspect of it, and it's over 2 weeks long of a build up. So
Yeah.
it's a beautiful time of year, boys. I guess is where I'm really getting to. It's starting to get real good.
Any weird gimmicks going on at Wilkesboro this year? I know isn't it like, didn't I see something like in the All-Star race this year there's a promoter's caution? Did you guys see this?
Yeah, they get to like
That-
I did
throw
hear
the
about
caution
that.
at any point
Yeah.
that they want.
Yeah, like I think it's SMI, the SMI guys whose name escapes me at the moment. Like get to throw a caution at any point they want during the race. I'm like, that is
So yeah, so this year's event will be expanded by 50 laps, including a competition break at or near the 100 lap mark. So instead of 200, it'll be 250 laps. A single optional promoter's caution flag can be thrown. If that yellow flag takes place, it must fly before lap 220. So they can't kill it in the last 30. Like they can't right before he passes, right? And it cannot be used if a naturally occurring caution happens after lap 200. So it's not enough to say wreck the field, but let's say Kyle Larson's about to lap the field or catch lappers, they can throw it and save some cars, things like that. So there's always that. I I don't know. I don't know what I'm expecting. Last year was only interesting if you watched the Kyle Larson in car. And he ran the truck race prior, him and Bubba did, and they found something and they used it on the actual race. But
Yeah, Larson was lower than everybody.
Can we just bring it
Pretty
back
much.
to Charlotte? If we're not even gonna have a second oval race, like that was another thing,
Gonna do
right?
back-to-back races in Charlotte.
So that's how it used to be. The All-Star race historically was at
It was
Charlotte.
like a 2-week break almost. Yeah.
Yep, it was at Charlotte. Really? Yes. So up until maybe 5 years ago, where they did, I don't know if you remember, but this was weird. It was old gen cars. They were talking about moving the numbers to the front or the rear, like you know how they're in the front. So they took the All-Star race to Bristol. They moved the numbers to the rear, and they put LED lights under the car. So they did that at Bristol. And then the next year they did it at Texas. And then that was when Ryan...
You'll remember the Texas.
The Ryan Blaney one. Yes, I did remember. I didn't black out a Penske win. And then I think that's... I can't remember if it was the year after they moved it to North Wilkesboro or there might have been... Maybe it was Texas again for a couple years.
I think it was Texas twice.
Texas twice and then they moved to North Wilkesboro. But up until that point, the All-Star race was always at Charlotte. And it was always a banger. Because it was a short track
on the big oval.
Yes,
or at the short track.
No. I meant to say it was short race. It was the big oval, a short race for $1 million at one of the highest speed tracks on the circuit. They would always have they'd roll a lotto ball and it would be like 16th. So that means the first 16 cars flipped orders.
Yeah.
After the first break, yeah, the All-Star race used to be a banger. And not only that, it mattered a ton, even if you weren't going to win, because you were dialing up your setup for the 600 right. Here in a week.
Practice for the 600, right?
Bring it back.
Weren't they doing heats for a bit at some point too for the All-Star race? Like, weren't they running like?
I've only ever seen the Open.
Maybe I'm thinking about the flip.
Maybe you're thinking about the flip. Yeah, it was in sections. Right, yeah, there were a bunch of different things, and not only that, if you won the first section, it was like 75,000. So it was like you were still getting money for winning those individual sections. So just because
what it was,
like you would win, and even though you got inverted, you'd still win 75 grand, and then the main winner got $1 million.
Yes,
and it was always like in with the way that contracts were done and stuff like that, it was $1 million awarded to, I believe, the driver, not to the team or whatever the case it was. So it mattered. I mean, they would always, you'd always hook the boys up afterwards, but like, sure. that was another big event, especially in the era. I don't know a Jimmy Johnson plug, but I randomly stumbled across a podcast he did, because Jimmy lives in England now, and did a random podcast with these motorsport guys, and they got to talking, and bro, they were saying Jimmy was upwards of like 30-40 million a year in those contracts back in. And now
that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Now I don't think a driver makes over 10 million a year in their salary. So it was so interesting to see how those things, kind of play out money wise and everything. So little pup insertion. But
special guest
for the peeps.
Oh,
this is Jack.
Cutie.
Yeah, can't really see his eyeball.
We don't need to, just a big fluff ball. So
so that's where I guess this is where I got confused, because this would be 4 stage racing, because I remember exactly the one that I'm thinking of when this happened. I want to say it was 07.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where like it was the fact that they did it in sections that made me think it was heats, and because they flipped it was where it was, because I know it was pre-stage racing, because I remember distinctly it was about 2007 2008 is where I have it in my head of like the All-Star race that I'm thinking about that was incredibly entertaining. And a lot of it had to do with the sections and the inversion of the front. Like, it was a good product to watch.
Dude, and the pit crew challenges. Do you remember the thing where you had to start and you had to it was like 2 cars right next to each other, and then they would say go, and then they would have to do a 4-tire stop right there, and then the cars would speed out, and it was about who got first back to the line. It was like a literally elimination of getting 4 fresh new tires on, and then both cars take off from pit road, and they try to beat each other around to the start finish line. Like, or the one where they took away the speed, the pit road speed limit, so you had to go out and then come in at full speed down pit lane, flying, and then pull in and get a pit stop and then go. Like, they did crazy things. And the All-Star race was like one of my favorite events of the year. And now it's a complete snoozer because they're like, we introduced like North Wilkesboro on a shitty short track package. Like, you know.
Well, now it feels like the All-Star game in other sports. That's
Right.
the thing, is like there was a certain uniqueness with the way they would do some certain things where gimmicks weren't that bad, when you're doing those kind of things with
Live
NASCAR.
squirrels, bro.
Made things
Nah, dude.
unique.
Nah, when it was
but
a short run testing session for the 600, and the race itself was at like a really difficult track of high speeds, it just makes sense to bring it back now that there's no second oval race. Like I guess imagine they took it away is because it was like you had oval in the summer, over in the fall. Okay, we got enough Charlotte. No, now it'd be great, and it's the home of NASCAR, so like. I mean, I guess
you're giving
Norfolk
drivers
a
chance to get back to most of the team's home base for
right.
that amount of time to
Well,
tune. and
Wilkesboro is not far away from Charlotte.
Right,
Well, right, exactly. But Charlotte's closer.
Well,
Still.
that's true. Charlotte is closer to
or
Charlotte,
or
right.
take it to, if we're not gonna do a cup race at Rockingham, do a Rockingham. That look good. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I will say this: we talked positively about the Homestead move and the potential committee moves, and so there's some positivity going. But yeah, sometimes the decisions is like what you mentioned with blackouts in your victory lane. It's like, do we want a good product? Like, what are we doing? So I'm really confused, but we'll see. I don't think that's a big enough gimmick, if you will, the caution for the All-Star race. I'd like to see some things return and more money being along and something that incentive, but right now it looks like Harrison Burton gets to run it. That's probably the biggest news of the All-Star race. Is Harrison Burton, because he got his one win last year, gets to come back and run the All-Star race, and the Rick Ware's 51. So I'll be so excited to watch him get lapped in about 3 seconds. Yeah.
So speaking of like wins and where we're sitting right now, one thing I think that's kind of interesting is I feel like over the last couple of years, we have had enough variety in winners that by this point in the season, a lot more spots for the playoffs had already been locked up and occupied.
Right.
And right now, like if we're looking at it, I want to say it's 9 or 10 drivers that
I don't think it's that many
in playoff standings without a win.
Oh, on points. Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean,
yeah,
Byron's got a win. Larson, Bell, Denny, Logano, Barry. That's
10 in the top 16.
That's it, right?
That 10 in the top 16.
And we're 11 or 12 races in.
They're not in the top 16 with points right now.
I think 12 races into the season.
So yeah, I mean, it's certainly making something interesting because
So it's six. So it's 6 winners with a max of 12 winners, if you want to think about it that way.
16,
right?
16 make the playoffs.
Well, no. I mean, we've only had 12 races.
Oh yeah.
So like, we could only have 12, and it's 6. So you're at about 50% of the maximum. But or not about 50. You are at 50% of the maximum. But
right.
Yeah, I think but there are guys who are going to get a win. Blaney's going to get a win. Reddick's going to get a win. I think we all expect probably Buescher to get a win, I would say. He's been super fast.
I don't know. That's about as quick as I thought he was going to be. I mean, outside pole, I picked him for my thing. I was feeling real comfortable about victory lane, dude. And he faded. In fact, Brad was somehow faster than him.
Brad was. Well, I think we know how Brad was faster. Brad decided, just don't put any air in the tires. I'm going to go try it out.
I mean, I'm starting to think. Right now, if I'm going to put money on an RFK driver to win a race, Ryan Preece is probably the closest, dude. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
He's in playoff position. We
probably think Briscoe's getting a win. I still think that.
I don't know. I think the 19's coming on. I mean, that race, I was very surprised that you didn't care much for that race because you want to talk about, I mean, he had to start at the rear of the field, started like way back.
It was a slog, though.
It was
a slog.
It was. I think what helped that car a ton, him and Denny stayed out the longest after the long run. So after Bowman pit, they came down with him, but him and Denny were in the back. They stayed out the longest on the green flag run and then came down and pit. Denny had worked himself up to fucking 7th, right? And that's how I was like, oh, geez, because I saw him back there battling in the 30s with Briscoe, and I was like, oh, Hamlin's having a long day. Well, that went away. And then I looked at Briscoe, and I when I repeat the Briscoe film, he's passing the 5. So, granted, 8-ish lap newer tires.
Yeah, unlapping himself.
But unlapping himself, and then went from about late 20s to I think he was fighting for 6th or 16th or 15th. And that's when I knew they figured it out. So they just need to unload a little bit quicker, get more confidence. Like that was a very confidence-inducing race. Again, a very quiet 4 top 5s, but not a lot of guys have got 4 top 5s. Especially considering the start. So I think the 19's in there. If I had to put money, I feel like Blaney's the safe bet for the next winner, or next new winner. But if we don't get one at the 600, SVG's right back in there because we're going to Mexico here soon, right? Or Chicago.
I think SVG probably gets a win. Yeah.
So
he's got as good of a chance as anyone left at getting a win this season.
Right.
With the number of road courses left.
Yeah, that was another thing I'm seeing a lot on the threads. There's a lot of discussion about him and being shitty on ovals. I'm like, was this not expected?
This is not what he does.
Yeah, like, and they're like, well, he had a whole year in Xfinity. What? Xfinity cars drive significantly different. And he wins one of these oval races, or one of these road course races, he's guaranteed top 16 points and top 16 money.
Well, also, he's competing with guys who've been racing on ovals
their
for like
whole life.
30
Their
years.
entire careers.
This is the big dogs.
Yeah,
this is the big dogs.
Is baffling to me to say that. Yeah, he's had a year to get there. Like, bro, you're racing in people. All they do is ovals. Like, they throw the road courses away because all the rest of their doing is ovals. Like, that's silly. That's a wild take.
It is not the same. And, you know, I call back to something I said before, what McDowell had mentioned on the radio. He was like, there's something about the situational awareness that Shane has. We're not seeing a regression in driving talent. We're just seeing a guy who, I mean, I watched a lot of V8 supercars lately. Go watch some of those in cars. They've got like 9 levers.
Those guys are crazy.
It looks like a Willy Wonka's chocolate factory in there. They're just pulling levers while driving. Brake bias, ride. I don't know what they're adjusting, but literally every turn they're setting up a turn, and then they make the turn, and they come up, and then they're setting up for that while driving against other people. Like, his ability to manage things in the car is elite. We know that he's going to be competing especially when those road courses come around. I don't think we ever see him competing for wins on an oval like we saw Juan Pablo Montoya kind of, you know, later in his career, starting to be a little bit more competitive on ovals. But again, all he has to do is win one race, and that's a Trackhouse car that's guaranteed 16th in the points or higher. And guess what? I don't know if the other two are going to be up there either. Right now, those cars are butt slow. Yeah. So
maybe SVG just needs to go and pick a fight with Tony Stewart, and then like he'll get the magic and start getting into the ovals. You know, he'll find a way. He'll find that Montoya magic.
Yeah, I mean, they're straight up just. I mean, I get it, and like, why I don't know, why are people wasting their breath saying it's anything other than what it is? We're expecting him to win one of the road course races, and then look, playoff money is good money payouts for these teams, especially for them, a tier 3 ride. You know what I mean? Now, when it comes playoffs, are we going to treat him the same way I've talked about Ricky Stenhouse in the playoffs? Yes. Or Harrison Burton in the playoffs? Kind of. I think there's more talent to winning a road course race than stealing a super speedway race away.
It all depends. It just depends how the races fall.
Is he gonna get knocked out the first round if there's a road course race in there? Probably not. Yeah. If there isn't, then okay.
Sure.
But hey, dude,
you never know.
Dude, if he reaches round of 8, win. A W, in my opinion. Like, that's a W season for, again, rookie year, right? Yeah. I tend to forget because they took away the yellow stripes this year, which I think is baloney. Shall we do? Are we gonna do an all-star race predictions?
I don't see why not. I mean, it's just
how about this? Let's with Harrison Burton not allowed, who's gonna finish worse in the all-star race?
Who's gonna finish the worst?
Yes, not including the open entry guy. So let me look at the 2025 NASCAR All-Star race roster. Which is anybody who won a race last year, except for Harrison Burton, because that's the easy one, right? So we go victory lane, but inverted. So who's going to be the worst finisher in this race?
So it's not all. Okay, so
do you need me to list the names?
No, I see him. I see him.
Are we good with that? An inverse victory lane.
So no Harrison Burton.
No Harrison Burton. He's driving a Rick Ware car, and he's not a full-time Cup driver. I think it's fair to say that he's gonna, or one of the open guys, right?
So whoever finishes worst out of these 20 guys,
yep,
gets the unvictory lane.
The unvictory lane.
Yeah.
So are we gonna throw out the fan vote guys?
Yes, fan vote guys don't count. It is literally just the guys that are automatically in the race right now.
Okay. All right. I got mine.
Would you like to start?
You guys? Yeah. Alex Bowman.
Funny you said that, because I was going to go Denny Hamlin. I think Denny's going to wreck himself out by being too fucking aggressive. And Denny's going to go in the back. All right, come on, pick him.
Like, I mean, now I'm set up. Like, well, shit. I was trying to think of who was gonna actually like. I had a driver in mind, but now I gotta pick Chase Briscoe.
There we go. Unvictory lane.
The favorite driver shuffle for the
favorite
misery lane, dude.
Misery lane is what
misery lane.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
That's funny.
And then you get 1 minute, but people can shout down every single thing that you possibly say.
How about this? If you win,
you get 1 minute of everybody talking about you.
No, no. If you win, you have to go 1 minute of talking only good things about that driver.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Deal.
If you win, you have to praise that driver.
There you go. For a full minute.
Right. Fair enough. We can do that. I like that.
Dude, I'm gonna have
you
backhanded.
You heard it here first. It's been established. Misery lane for the first time on the Intentional Wreck podcast.
That's a good one. That's a good. There we go. Now I give a shit about All-Star Weekend.
Here we go. It's gonna be wild. Okay.
Do I get to write the best pro anti Denny Hamlin monologue of my life?
See, that was the only reason that I was like, well, you know what? I think he's got a point now. Now he gets to talk positive about Denny. So,
positive. Like, it'll sound positive.
Can we get Nick in here too? Like, can you guys double up on that? Can we get both of y'all to do that one? So,
what Nick says for the All-Star race, Barry to finish worst.
It's fine. It's fine. He can double up and halfway with Finn on that. That way, you know, if Denny does it, then if Denny wrecks out, then I can hear you both talk positively about Denny for a solid minute.
That's fun.
Anyway, yes. But that right there is going to bring us to a sharp, solid hour, and that's going to wrap things up for us this week. Please make sure you find us and follow us on the socials at IntWreckPod. That's at IntWreckPod. We are on Twitch. We are on Spotify. We are on YouTube under the Intentional Wreck Pod. Let's roll into All-Star Weekend and have some fun. Please share the pod with your friends. We'll catch you all next week.
See ya.
Peace.